In this video, I'm going to show you a building decision that was so smart, so quietly effective at protecting a family's home, that for generations, people simply refused to do it any other way. It kept the most dangerous part of the house from burning the whole thing down. It kept the living spaces cooler and cleaner. It saved lives. And it was completely standard until we decided we knew better, pulled it right into the middle of our homes, and never looked back. I'm talking about the detached kitchen. The kitchen that was deliberately built as a separate structure, away from the house. Starting with, alright, picture this. It's the early 1800s, somewhere in the American South. You walk up to a fine farmhouse or a plantation home and you notice something strange by modern eyes. The kitchen isn't in the house. It's a separate little building sitting maybe 20 or 30 feet away, connected to the main house by nothing more than a covered walkway or a bare stretch of open ground. Smoke is rising from its chimney. Inside, there's a roaring open hearth, pots hanging over the flame, the heat, absolutely brutal, and the family's actual home where they sleep, where they live, sits at a safe, deliberate distance from all of it. Now here's the part that gets me. This wasn't an accident, and it wasn't poverty, and it wasn't because they couldn't figure out how to attach a room. It was a choice. A careful, intentional design decision made by people who understood something about fire that we have mostly forgotten. They knew exactly where house fires started. They knew the kitchen, with its constant open flame, was the single most dangerous room a family owned. So they took that danger and they physically removed it from the house entirely. And if you're sitting there in a home where the kitchen is right in the center of everything, open to the living room, steps from the bedrooms, the stove sitting a few feet from your curtains and your couch, I want you to sit with the fact that for most of history, that arrangement would have looked reckless. So why did people go to the trouble of building a whole separate structure just to cook in? Why did it work so well? And why on earth did we stop? Let's get into it. To understand the detached kitchen, you have to understand what cooking actually was for most of human history. It wasn't flipping a switch on a clean electric range. It was tending a live, open-fire hearth blazing for hours, sometimes all day, with real flame, flying sparks, hot grease, and embers. Cooking meant keeping a dangerous fire going inside a building made largely of wood, and people learned, the hard way, over and over, exactly how that story tended to end. The solution of separating the kitchen goes back a very long way and shows up all over the world, wherever people cooked over open flame in wooden buildings. But it became especially common and especially refined in the American South from colonial times through the 1800s. There were a few reasons it took such firm hold there, and fire was the big one, but the heat mattered too. In a hot, humid climate, the last thing you wanted was a giant roaring hearth pumping heat into your living quarters all summer long. Put the kitchen in its own building, and the house stayed dramatically cooler and more livable. The detached kitchen, often called a summer kitchen or a cookhouse, was simply how a serious household was laid out. It was so normal that the question wasn't, why would you separate the kitchen? It was, why on earth would you ever put that fire hazard inside the house with you? The logic was obvious to them. In a way, it has stopped being obvious to us. And that shift, from obvious to forgotten, is the whole story. Let me break this down, because the detached kitchen was a genuinely clever piece of design, and the genius of it is in the details. It wasn't just a shed where you cook. Every part of the arrangement was doing a job. First, the separation distance itself. The kitchen was set far enough from the main house that a fire breaking out in the cookhouse, the most likely place for a fire to start, could not easily jump to the home. Fire spreads by direct contact, by radiant heat, and by flying embers, and putting open ground between the two structures defeated the first two almost entirely. The dangerous building could burn to the ground, and the family's home, and the family inside it, would be untouched. That gap was the entire point. It was a fire break, built into the layout of the property. Second, the connection. Many detached kitchens were linked to the house by a covered walkway or breezeway, sometimes called a whistle walk, so that food and people could move back and forth protected from rain and sun. But notice what that connection was. A light, open passage, not a shared wall. It gave you convenience without giving fire a bridge. Third, the building itself was often constructed with fire in mind, sometimes of brick or stone, with a massive hearth and a sturdy chimney built to contain the constant flame. It was, in a sense, a purpose-built fire room, designed to hold the most dangerous activity of daily life safely apart from everything else. And fourth, there was the bonus benefit that made the whole thing even more worth it: heat and smoke management. All that cooking heat, all that smoke, all those cooking smells, all that grease in the air, it stayed out of the house entirely. The living spaces were cooler, cleaner, and more comfortable. The family got the food without the furnace. Put it all together, a deliberate gap, a non-structural connection, a fire-hardened cookhouse, and the removal of heat and smoke from the home. And you have a design that solves several problems at once with nothing more than smart placement. Here's the thing about the detached kitchen. Like every old protective design, it existed because there was a real and deadly threat that demanded a real solution, and that threat was fire. Specifically the kind of catastrophic house fire that could destroy everything a family owned and kill them in their sleep. You have to understand how constant and how serious the fire danger really was. Before modern stoves, before electricity, the home was full of open flame as a matter of daily life, the cooking hearth above all, but also candles, oil lamps, and fireplaces for heat. And of all of those, the kitchen was the worst offender by far. It had the biggest fire, burning the longest, with the most grease and the most activity around it. Cooking fires were, by a wide margin, the leading way a house burned down. Now add the rest of the picture. Houses were built largely of wood. There was no fire department to call in much of the country, and even where there was one, response was slow and water was scarce. There was no smoke detector to wake you, no sprinkler in the ceiling, no fire extinguisher under the sink. If a fire took hold in the kitchen in the middle of the night, it could consume the entire house before anyone even woke up. The stakes were total. A single kitchen fire could mean the loss of the home, the loss of everything inside it, and the loss of the family's lives. Okay, so if the detached kitchen was so effective at preventing the most common kind of catastrophic house fire and kept the home cooler and cleaner on top of that, why did we abandon it? Why is your kitchen now sitting right in the heart of your house? Honestly, a few reasons. And as usual, none of them are because the old design stopped working. Reason 1. The fire threat genuinely shrank. This is the big one, and it's a real change, not an illusion. The open hearth gave way to the enclosed cast iron stove, and then to gas and electric ranges that contained their flame or used no flame at all. The raw, sparking, open fire that made the old kitchen so dangerous simply went away. Once cooking no longer meant tending a roaring open blaze. The single biggest reason to exile the kitchen from the house lost most of its force. The danger was reduced enough that keeping the kitchen at arm's length started to feel like overkill. Reason 2, convenience and comfort pulled the kitchen back in. A separate cookhouse is a hassle. You're carrying food across a yard or a breezeway in all weather. The cook is isolated from the rest of the household. As stoves got cleaner and safer, and as central heating and better ventilation arrived, the practical case for attachment got stronger and stronger. Convenience won, the way it almost always does. Reason 3. The entire idea of the home flipped. Over the 20th century, the kitchen went from being a hot, smoky, servants' work fire hazard to being the social and emotional center of the house, the room everyone gathers in, the heart of the open floor plan. We didn't just attach the kitchen. We put it in the middle and tore down the walls around it. The detached kitchen wasn't only made unnecessary by safer stoves. It was made undesirable by a completely new vision of what a kitchen is for. A room you want at the center of family life is the exact opposite of a building you banish to the far end of the yard. Let's just be honest about where this leaves us, because the picture is more complicated than problem solved. Here's the uncomfortable fact. Cooking is still, by a wide margin, the leading cause of house fires today. After all the progress, all the safer stoves, all the modern technology, the kitchen is still the #1 place your home is most likely to catch fire. The old builder's core insight that the kitchen is the most dangerous room is as true now as it ever was. What changed is that we've stopped solving it with distance and started solving it with detection and suppression. We brought the dangerous room into the heart of the house, and to manage the risk, we layered on smoke detectors, fire extinguishers, range hoods, and in some homes, sprinkler systems. And that approach genuinely works. These tools save countless lives. I'm not pretending we got it wrong, but notice the shift in philosophy, because it's the same trade we keep making. The old design prevented the disaster. Structurally, the fire simply couldn't reach you. The modern approach accepts the danger right in the middle of the home and relies on warning you fast and putting it out quickly once it starts. One keeps the threat away from you by design. The other lets the threat sit at the center of your house and trusts technology to catch it in time. Most of the time, the modern way works fine, but it depends on the detector having a working battery, on someone being home and able to respond, on the fire being caught early. The detached kitchen depended on none of that. It just kept the fire somewhere it couldn't kill you. Here's the part that actually makes this click, and it's beautifully simple. Fire needs a spread to be catastrophic, and fire spreads in exactly 3 ways: direct contact with flames, radiant heat that ignites nearby materials, and flying embers that land and start new fires. Every one of those mechanisms is defeated or badly weakened by distance. Think about it. Direct flame contact requires the fire to physically touch your house, put 30 feet of open air between the cookhouse and the home, and there's nothing for the flames to climb across. Radiant heat, the invisible energy that can ignite wood from a distance without touching it, falls off dramatically the farther you get from the source. A fire that could set a shared wall ablaze in seconds may not even scorch a building across a yard. And flying embers, while they can travel, are far less likely to start a serious fire when they have to cross open ground and land on a separate, often fire-hardened structure. Separation attacks all three spread mechanisms at once. This is the exact same principle that modern firefighters and foresters use when they cut firebreak strips of cleared land that stop a wildfire by giving it nothing to burn across. The detached kitchen was a firebreak built into the home, a deliberate gap of nothing between the dangerous structure and the safe one. The old builders didn't have the physics of radiant heat transfer written down in a textbook. They didn't need it. They had watched enough houses burn to understand, in their bones, that a fire across the yard is a tragedy you can rebuild from, while a fire in the next room is one that can kill your whole family. Distance was the science, and they had figured it out by watching. So here's the question you've been waiting for. Does any of this still make sense, or is the detached kitchen just a charming relic? The honest answer is that the original version, a whole separate cookhouse, mostly doesn't fit modern life. But the principle behind it is quietly making a comeback in a very specific and very popular form. Look at the outdoor kitchen, the backyard grill station, the summer kitchen, the pizza oven on the patio. People are voluntarily building secondary cooking spaces outside their homes again, and while they'll tell you it's for entertaining and for flavor, they are recreating the detached kitchen almost exactly. They've taken the hottest, smokiest, most flame-intensive cooking, the searing, the open fire, the high heat, and moved it back outside, away from the house, for the same reasons people always did: heat, smoke, and safety. The idea never actually died. It just put on a patio and called itself a lifestyle upgrade. Alright, let's make this practical, because you don't need to build a separate cookhouse to use what the old builders knew. First, take the core lesson seriously. The kitchen is still the most dangerous room in your home, and most kitchen fires are entirely preventable. Never leave cooking unattended, especially anything involving high heat or oil, which is behind a huge share of serious kitchen fires. Keep flammable things, towels, packaging, curtains, paper well away from the stove. Second, recreate the firebreak in spirit. If you love high heat, high smoke, open flame cooking, searing, frying, grilling, do it outside whenever you can, on a patio or in a yard, away from the structure of your home. You get the old safety benefit and the better cooking at the same time. That outdoor grill or burner isn't just for fun. It's a detached kitchen in miniature, keeping your most dangerous cooking out of the house. Third, make sure your detection layer actually works, because in a modern attached kitchen, it's your real line of defense. Test your smoke alarms, replace the batteries, and put a working alarm near, but not so close that it's constantly false triggering the kitchen. Keep a fire extinguisher rated for grease and electrical fires within reach of the stove, and actually know how to use it. The old design didn't need any of this because the fire couldn't reach the house. Your kitchen is in the house, so this is the trade you have to honor. And finally, respect the danger the way the old builders did. The deepest lesson here isn't about architecture, it's about taking the kitchen's fire risk seriously instead of forgetting it exists. We've made the kitchen so clean and so central that it's easy to forget it's still the most likely place our home will burn. A little of that old wariness, applied to a modern kitchen, goes a very long way. Here's what actually gets me about all of this. We took the most dangerous room in the house, the one that has always been, and still is, the leading cause of home fires, and instead of keeping it at a careful distance, we pulled it into the dead center of our homes and knocked down the walls around it. And we were able to do that safely, only because of a stack of technology and a much tamer kind of fire. That's genuine progress. But it's worth seeing it clearly for what it is. We traded a design that prevented the disaster for a design that manages the risk. The detached kitchen represents an older philosophy that shows up again and again in how people used to build the idea that the smartest way to survive a danger is to arrange your life so the danger can't reach you in the first place. Not detect it, not fight it, just keep it physically apart. We've largely traded that humility for confidence in our technology. And most of the time, that confidence is justified. But every year, kitchen fires still destroy homes and take lives, and almost every one of them happens in a kitchen sitting right in the middle of the house. The old builders who walked their dinner across a breezeway from a separate little cookhouse weren't being primitive or paranoid. They had simply watched what fire does, and they built their homes around the answer. The kitchen across the yard, smoke rising from its own chimney while the family slept safely in a separate building, was proof of exactly that. Not bad for a little brick building in the yard.